Hi and welcome back to the studio. Today's lesson, really interesting one on that most elusive of things in golf, the perfect strike. Just going to share a few thoughts with you today on what causes a good strike, what causes a not so good strike, and how we can get our strike back if we've lost it or just improve it generally. We'll all have hit those perfect shots which feel great off the middle of the club. They sound good, almost feels like you've hit nothing at all. Why can't we do that more often? How can we make it happen? So stay with me, it won't take long, we'll get this sorted. Let me show you hopefully what it feels and sounds like. 18th at Carnoustie, I was just hitting a few balls into 146 yards I've got my 9-iron. Let's see if we can push one up towards the flag on this hole here. Okay, so you can hear that nice sound, decent length, oh well. 7 or 8 feet left of the flag, but pretty good on the hole. So that's recorded all the impact criteria from that shot. Let's go through it a bit one thing at a time, and I'll point out the bit that you may not have appreciated about what helps you strike the ball perfectly. Okay, so behind me here is all the impact criteria from that last shot that you just saw me hit. And I'll go through that in a second. But first of all, hands up if in golf you thought that when you hit the golf ball, the shaft of the club was vertical as at the point of impact. Okay, a lot of you will have thought that, and it's a good, I can understand why you would think that. It's a decent image to have, that the club returns to vertical when you hit the golf ball. This would mean that the loft on the club that is from the manufacturer would be presented to the golf ball exactly at the same number. Agreed? Okay, so this 9-iron that I've just hit there has got 38 degrees of loft on it, okay, when it leaves the factory, when I bought it. And I want to show you now from the detail behind how much of that loft is showing to the golf ball at the very point that it touches the golf ball for the first time, okay? And as you can see on the picture here, if I get out of the way, you can see that the angle of attack was downwards, but more importantly, the loft showing on the club at the point of impact was 29.8 degrees. So let's say 30 degrees if we round it up. That is 8 degrees less than the club has on it, which means by definition at the point of impact my shaft was leaning forward 8 degrees at the point of impact. Okay, now some of you won't have appreciated how much that needs to lean forward, but it has a lot of effect on how good your quality of strike can be. Okay, it explains things like always why good players take a divot, because if you think if the shaft's leaning forward and the club is on its way down, that's why you hit the ball first and then the ground second. If you're somebody who takes very few divots and picks the ball off the top of the turf, then firstly, well done, because you have to be an incredibly precise striker to do that. But secondly, you're missing out on a bit of distance, because as you bring the shaft vertical at impact, you're showing all 38 degrees of loft from that club to the golf ball. So the ball's going to go higher. It's not going to go forward as much or at as much speed, because when you hit the club with a low, hit the ball, sorry, with a lower lofty club, it clearly goes lower and faster. Now the backspin will create the ball up to its normal height. So you're not losing anything by that either. So I carried that last golf ball about 145 yards with a 9-iron. And I haven't got the fastest clubhead speed. It's just a very efficient impact position to present the club leaning forwards. So when we come into impact with the shaft leaning forwards, that by definition means that I have to be hitting the ball on the way down. Now, when I'm hitting the ball on the way down by 6 degrees here, you can see that if there was any inconsistency in the ground or any poor lies, for example, my club is going to be descending on the back of the ball and avoiding any trouble which might be behind the ball. If you're someone who frequently catches the ground before the ball, or catches the ball halfway up, or just can't get a decent strike, this will be because your angle of attack into the golf ball is not sufficiently down, which in turn means that at impact you're presenting too much loft. So not only are you having poorer strikes, but you're also not hitting the ball as far as you could. So there's a real advantage to trying to learn to hit the golf ball with less loft on the club. And I'll show you a couple of ways that I've had success getting people to do that over the years. The last thing I'll say about quality of strike is obviously to get the nice feeling that you get with a good quality of strike, we need to hit the ball at the middle of the club. That not only means left to right middle, but also up the club enough to get away from the very bottom, because those bottom strikes really jar your hands. They don't feel great, they don't sound great, and in winter when it's cold, freezing cold, they can actually be quite painful. So by definition, again, if I show you this in close up, if I bring the club in with a vertical shaft and hit the ball, the club can only contact the very bottom groove of the club. If I now lean the shaft forward, you can see the impact point of the ball is moving up the club about 2 or 3 grooves, which gets to where the sweet spot is on a golf club. So everything is improved if we learn to present less loft at impact, which will increase your angle of attack down and move the strike up the face. Okay, hope that's all made sense. How we're going to do that, I'm going to go through now. I'll just change the screen back and we'll try and share a few thoughts with you to improve your own quality of strike. Okay, back on the fairway. Let's now play a shot, which is a decent golf shot, but where I present more loft from the club to the golf ball at impact. And this is a way that a lot of you will play the game out there. As I've said before, it has penalties, in fact, of strike, because you might catch things before the ball, like tufts of grass and things. But I will try and now play a decent shot, but just presenting more loft to the golf ball. Okay, so it is a decent shot. It's on its way, it's on target. Obviously hasn't gone as far, which we'll talk about in a second. But you can see now, I've put the data up on the screen in the tiles there. The loft I presented to the golf ball was 34 degrees compared to my normal 30, 29, 28. And you can see the effect that's had. I've hit the ball on the way up instead of on the way down, 0.4. Instead of launching at 20 or 21, I've launched at 25.8, so nearly 26 degrees. That's actually somewhere between my pitching wedge and my gap wedge launch angle. And the ball's gone 126 yards, which is exactly somewhere between my gap wedge and pitching wedge distance. So it's a decent enough shot, but with the same golf swing, putting the club into impact with more loft on it has really weakened the shot and has made me struggle for distance and strike, because the ball came off the bottom of the club for reasons we now know. So how can I help you improve your strike in an easy way? Let's do the low-hanging fruit first. First of all, at setup, we are trying to recreate our impact position. So if you're someone who sets up to the golf ball with the shaft vertical, let's not do that anymore. Let's actually set up in the way that we want to impact the club. So from your setup position, rest the club on your left trouser crease so it's leaning forward, and go and get the club from there. So we can see now most good players, you will see, have shaft lean at address. Okay, it's already built in so that when I rotate and come back to the same position, I've got shaft lean at impact. So that's something you can do without having to think about anything during the swing. You can do that at setup. Now during the swing, I could go into a lot of detail about how we get that shaft lean at impact, all the physics and biomechanics. Basically, the better players of this game in the world and the tour pros you see on TV, they are able, and they have trained themselves to hold this angle between the club and their arm for longer before impact. So you can still see a 90-degree angle here. My hand is actually past where the ball would be here. And then at the last minute, as the wrists unhinge, we're left with shaft lean in, a nice driving divot, and especially with short irons, and a good quality of strike. Most club golfers do the opposite. As they come down into the golf swing, the wrist hinge is lost early. We call it casting. Here, now you can see that the point of impact, the shaft is leaning backwards. I've lost all my speed. I've added a lot of loft to the golf club. And it's a lot of hard work to create any distance when you're elevating the ball so much. Plus the fact we bring into play the ground behind the golf ball, and it makes your striking incredibly difficult to get consistent. Now, to work on your golf swing whilst trying to hold that angle, I've tried it many, many times. It's nigh on impossible to get it into a position where you can convert your practice into real play. The club head's traveling at almost 70 and 80 miles an hour normally. very hard to make changes. So we need a quick tip, if you like. We need a thought process that creates the right result but allows you to hit the golf ball. And over the years of my coaching, 30 plus, this is what I have had the most success with, these sorts of thoughts. Okay, so first one, and if you've had lessons with me, I apologize, you've heard this before, but we need to feel as though we're setting the ball off on a lower trajectory, so hitting a lower shot. You will have experienced this when you've had to punch the ball out of the rough. You've all had that experience where you've had the rough, the lie has meant that you've had to hit down on the ball, possibly even with the ball at the back of your stance, and you're all only trying to chip it 50 yards back to the fairway, and you flush it and it goes 100 yards through into the rough on the other side, because you've improved the efficiency of your impact and you've hit the ball on the way down with less loft on it. We're trying to recreate that with our full shots, and a good mental image to have is, imagine when you next go and hit some golf balls that you have got your coffee table from home set up in front of you, about a metre ahead of you, okay? And on top of your table is all your best fine glass and china, and you're trying to hit the ball under the table so as not to smash anything. That feeling of hitting the ball lower under the table, you can see as I do it head on to camera here, will generate this shaft lean impact and this lower launch angle and less loft on the golf club. It's a really good feeling that you can play with, and it actually has immediate results with people that we've helped over the years. So just try and feel as though you're hitting every shot low. If you've played a lot of golf in the wind, you've probably done this automatically to try and hit the ball low and under the wind, or under the boughs of a tree when you're coming out, from the side of the fairway, something like that. It's that feeling that we want to create with every single shot. So next time you go and play, don't cheat and move the ball back. Keep the ball in the same position. Lean your shaft forward here, and then try and hit whatever club you've got. Try and hit it almost as low as you can in terms of its launch angle when it sets off here. And you can see, especially in the studio, I can see how much loft I presented to every single shot, and try and overtrain it when you're learning. Let's have a look at those numbers. There we are, look, 25 degrees of loft showing. So less than I would actually like. It's a 38-degree club, don't forget. The angle of attack went up, as it would do, 8.6 degrees. The launch was 16 degrees, and it normally should be around about 20, and it's carried 146 yards. But it's a good training exercise to overdo that feeling of trying to hit your ball under your own coffee table. Okay, so I hope all of that has made sense. I mean, it's relatively straightforward. Present less loft at impact, set the ball off lower, your striking will improve, and your point on the club face will also improve. Everything about your golf game will improve if you can present less loft at impact. If you're in any trouble, come and see me or one of the boys and we'll help you achieve that. But I hope that's something that helps your golf game going forward. Here's just another way of looking at the same thing on video of how much shaft lean we want to impact. On the right hand screen here, you may or may not recognise this chap. He's Simon Khan. He's won the PGA at Wentworth, obviously, and now on the Legends Tour. A very successful player, and I've known him since he was an assistant. He came to the studio, and you can see with Simon, obviously a very, very good player, but you can see that down into impact here, his hands are approximately level with the ball at this point, but the club head has still got about 2 feet to travel. And as he comes down into the golf ball, you can see the shaft leaning forward. If I stop him at the point of impact, the shaft is clearly leaning forward by 7, 8, 10 degrees here. Now my attempt, obviously Simon's a better player than me, but younger than me too. You can see similar sort of thing. The hands are level with the ball. I haven't got quite as far to go to the ball. I can't hold the angle quite as well as I used to, or as well as Simon can. But you can see that just prior to impact here, I've got a similar shaft lean immediately before we strike the golf ball. So both hitting the ball on the way down, both with the shaft leaning forward. Just one of us is a little bit better at doing it than the other, and that shows in our playing careers. But yeah, just to show you, if you're videoing yourself at the range or anything, have a good look at your impact position and make sure with any club 6 iron and below, if you like 6, 7, 8, 9, etc., that you've got some shaft lean into impact. to help with your striking.